All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It is a Friday morning. It is bright and early here in Seattle land, but excited to be back on LinkedIn. Another episode of our new series called B2B Book Club. Realize there's a lot of good stuff out there to read. There are a ton of books that are valuable for sales and marketing professionals, especially in B2B on a regular basis. A lot of books, a few of them are good, a handful of them are really good and great. And so we're featuring some of the best books that we find and read across the web. So very excited to have joining us today, Alan Berrey. He is the author of the book Beyond Expertise: How Trust, Vision, and Delivery Will Redefine Your Relationships with Customers and Colleagues. Alan, thanks so much for getting up early and doing this with us.
It's a pleasure, Matt. Thank you very much for having me.
So we get a lot of books, a lot of publishers say, "Hey, we'd just be interested in your audience." And yeah, because like I said, some of them are good, some of them are sort of marginally useful. This one really caught my attention because I think we have a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how to build their own expertise in the marketplace, how to build their own media channels, how to figure out how to create and orchestrate expertise from their own people as part of their awareness building and market building in the market. And I thought your book did a great job of sort of outlining that. So would love to have you maybe just start with like why this topic for you? What was behind sort of this specific topic around expertise as your next book?
Yeah, this is a long story, Matt, but the short version of it is after programming software for a while, I found myself getting pulled into sales meetings, right? My sales colleagues would be going out to their prospective clients and trying to sell new business. And we were a consulting shop and we were, interested in billable hours. And they would come to me and say, "Hey, Alan, I've got this customer. They've got some questions and I need you to come and answer them." And I would get dragged into one meeting after another. And I found myself not really knowing exactly what people wanted. Either I was too technical or not technical enough. Either the salespeople liked what I did or they didn't like what I did. I knew that my sales colleagues wanted to make more sales, but I wasn't exactly sure how my role was supposed to really supplement that. And so I floundered for a long time. Eventually, I just observed what other people did. And over the course of about 20 years, I just took notes, on what some good people that I saw did and what others didn't. And eventually, I shared this 20-year list of notes with a friend, and she said, "Look, Alan, you got a book there." And it really was almost a book in and of itself. Of course, it had to be adjusted, but it was really kind of my own self-help over the course of the last 20 years. And I just kind of tossed it out there because it might be helpful for others. Because I know if someone would have given it to me, it would have saved some of my colleagues a lot of frustration in helping them in the sales process.
Absolutely. Well, the book is called Beyond Expertise. It was published earlier this year, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a bunch of different places online. And I think there's sometimes, Alan, there's a difference between sort of having expertise and having other people perceive you as having expertise. And there's a big bridge there where there's a lot of value on the other side. What's the difference? Like, why do some people not get to the point where others see them as sort of an expert or a thought leader, and how can individuals help bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are a bunch of contributors to that. There's a lot more than we can totally go into in this conversation. But three things really stand out when people are looking at what really is an expert. And once again, this took me a long time to discover this, and really comes down to, are you knowledgeable on the subject that you're working on? Are you really competent in this subject? Do you have the skills to actually perform something or do something? And then do you have the attitude that goes along with it? And attitude in the sales scenario really goes a long ways. A lot of our technical colleagues, they think that they're experts, and in some rights they are, but they don't demonstrate that. They don't convey that in a convincing way because their attitude just simply doesn't measure up to what people are expecting.
The attitude piece is really interesting to me here, right? Because I think sometimes you see people that are sort of experts or thought leaders, and they come across as, I don't know, arrogant. They come across as a little know-it-all, maybe a little preachy. So when I think about sort of knowledge and skills and attitude, when I think about attitude, the way you just describe it also makes me think about approach. Like, what is your approach and what is your demeanor digitally and non-digitally when you are sharing information? Is that part of the formula as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a quick caveat, a little story from a few years ago. I was in the process of putting this book together. I went out and interviewed lots of my former colleagues and friends, and I was talking with one chief marketing officer, and I said, "Hey, Mark, you've met with a lot of clients, you've met with a lot of technical people, you've had technical meetings in a lot of places. What is the single attribute that you would like to have?" And he said, without hesitation, he said, confidence, hands down. He said, I would rather have a technical colleague in a conversation who's just brimming with confidence than someone who can answer every single question. He said, confidence, hands down. I would bring one other thing into it, which really helps kind of to your point about a little bit of arrogance. And that one really comes down to an element of curiosity, right? When a technical person is really interested and curious, it really takes down those barriers of, hey, is this just an arrogant snob that wants to talk to me?
I mean, that combination of confidence and curious is really, I think, interesting, right? Where you can continue to sort of be a learner, you can ask questions, you can sort of imply and exude the fact that you don't have all the answers. It's okay to be confident and yet vulnerable at the same time. I think sometimes that's part of becoming sort of someone that people want to follow and listen to, even if they see you as having expertise. To see you also as someone who is like them, I think is part of the process. Can you do that and be confident and exude that confidence at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you're right on. In fact, we kind of hope for more honesty in that attitude than arrogance, as you point out. It took me a long time to discover that even though my sales colleagues were asking me to come into meetings because they thought there were technical questions that they couldn't easily answer, I wasn't really there to answer questions. I mean, yeah, as a technical supplement to the sales process, you have to answer questions, but your real goal is the threefold items that I laid out in the book, which are trust, vision, and delivery, right? Those are the three primary objectives that a technical colleague really needs to know and understand before going into a client interaction.
Those don't happen overnight. Right. I think, you see, I mean, I'm sure a lot of PR firms are, used to having clients come and say, we want to make our CEO a thought leader. Can you work on that? And then what are our objectives to measure that in 30 days? Right. And so it's not that simple. It's not just buying a byline, but it's got to start somewhere. Right. So let's assume you're starting with someone who has some expertise, some authority, some knowledge in the space. What are things that you ask them to do in terms of sort of format and delivery? What are things, little building blocks, foundational elements they can do to begin to communicate that expertise to the outside world?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. And, one of the things that I did on my pathway to writing the book was I dove into all the scholarship on the subject of expertise, right? What do researchers say on this? Because there's a lot of people who have been asking that or similar questions over the years. And one of the models that I lean back on is actually pretty dated. It goes back into the 1980s by a couple of brothers from Cal State called Stuart and Hubert Dreyfus. The Dreyfus and Dreyfus model has been out for a while. It's been adjusted and tweaked over the years, but it really lays out 5 different elements of expert development, right? From becoming a novice to proficient to a great expert. They kind of lay it into 5 different areas of growth and development. And those are the things that we work with people about, is those primary 5 domains.
Love it. I feel like when it comes to sort of expertise, authority, communicating authority, there's a lot that the business world, the B2B world can learn from the military. You spent time you were a communications specialist with the U.S. Army Airborne Rangers. So thank you for your service, first of all. Second, what are some things that you took from that experience that have become part of this book that are key tenets of how to create and communicate expertise?
Yeah, that's great. As a communications sergeant, I was expected to be able to communicate effectively, and I had plenty of bad experiences with that. One of the things that I learned is communication under duress is really, really hard. And I was finding myself jumping out of an airplane, pulling out a backpack, setting up a satellite communications, and communicating the ground forces with the airborne elements of our attack forces. And it's tough. It's tough. And I didn't think for a long time that it had a whole lot of relevancy to the corporate environment where I was talking with people and conveying messages from one side to another. But I found that it's really a lot of the same thing, right? A technical person in a sales process is really an interpreter in a lot of ways. It's a person who takes the language of technology and translates it into the language of the business and the client, right? And so it's that ability to bridge those two massive interests and bridge that divide between them, between the business and the technology, that is so relevant in B2B sales and technical support in sales. Could tell you a ton of stories from that, both from the business world and a few horror stories from the military as well.
Oh man, I mean, I know we're going to run out of time here in just a couple of minutes, but like, I think I'd love to hear more stories of jumping out of airplanes and sort of the context of that. Probably plenty of stuff you can't share as well. Just a couple more minutes here with our guest, Alan Berrey. He's the author of the book Beyond Expertise. And I really highly recommend this book. The topic and the subject matter are highly relevant to a lot of B2B folks. I found this a very, very readable book as well. So just really appreciated the format and the way you put this together. So published in August of this year. It's beginning of October as we read this. As we do this session. You know, books take a while to get published once they're written and put together, and I think this is pulled together from a lot of experience you have. Talk about the last year and a half and some of the changes you've seen in the business and communication and expertise environment that maybe have been exacerbated by the fact that I'm doing this from my basement, right? And that we're all like, we're spending less time in person. Some of that will come back, some of that won't. Things are going to be a little different. Would there be anything different? Would you have rewritten parts of the book based on what you've seen in the last year and a half?
Probably a little bit differently, because you're right. It's been at least 6 months since I actually put a word on page that was now in the book. And so a lot of things happen. So one of the things I think I would accentuate a little bit more is the crisis that experts are under right now. And I don't think we have to look much further than Anthony Fauci as, America's expert. Like him or hate him, there's a lot that we could learn from, Dr. Fauci as our health expert. I mean, I've kind of observed him from, how well does he do? He does a few things really well and he does a few things poorly. And there's a bunch of instruction. Maybe one of my next books will actually be a case study on the entire expert role of the pandemic, because we really need to do better as experts, because there's so much information out there that experts have to overcome all the time, right? We're constantly battling against the lightly informed, and that's another model that's out there. The model of someone becoming confident because they have a little bit of knowledge, and then the expert combating with that little bit of knowledge can be really frustrating. So I would probably have, spent a little bit more time on that subject had I seen what I knew, what we didn't know was coming.
So it's a good point. And without getting into the politics of it all, I think, expertise in a sea of noise can be a challenge. There's self-proclaimed experts all over the place and to your point, if, you don't know what you're talking about, but you exude confidence, it's like, well, sounds like she knows what she's talking about. What are a couple things that you've seen both in your research over the years with Fauci that sort of can help certain experts sort of stand out of the crowd and to sort of be perceived authentically, rightly as more authoritative?
Yeah, it really comes down to a handful of things. And this one actually goes into another element of research that's out there that I really enjoy. There's a professor named James Shanto. I think he's retired now, but he's from Kansas State University. And he studied what are the attributes that people look for, right? I mean, a normal barometer is, how much experience do you have, right? And we all know that has some relevance, but it's not perfectly, right? And in the case of Anthony Fauci, that's clearly something that he checked that off, right? Plenty of experience, right? The pedigree is right? But one of the things that Chantel points out is that experts are discerning. That is the primary difference, is they can see things that other people can't see, and they can draw a line between what matters and what doesn't. And that's really what it comes down to. If you can be in a meeting and you can demonstrate discernment, right? cut out all the noise, like you said, and focus on those things that matter. That elevates the expert just remarkably.
Love it. Well, I know you're super busy. I appreciate you taking a few minutes here on a Friday morning to join us. Definitely encourage everyone to get this book and go to Amazon, look for Beyond Expertise. You want to learn more about Alan and his team, go to expertdig.com as well. Some great content up there. He's got online courses around sort of unlocking the potential of your experts as well. So Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time on B2B Book Club.